Hello and welcome to the Small Town Auto Race Track or START gameplay tutorial. So you should have already got your game set up. If you haven't, go ahead and watch the setup tutorial um, that we have on our webpage to get everything set up like this. So we're going to just jump in. So the first thing that you need to know is that the goal of the game is to have the most victory points. So victory points are in the bottom right corner of every card. So if you have this card in your deck, it's worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. And this is a deck building game, which means that you start with some starter cards. You have 10. Our hand has 5 in it right now to start the game. And then we have our other 5 cards laying down here. As we use these cards to get other cards from the track, our deck grows and we get more victory points in our deck. Into the game, the player with the most victory points wins the game. Okay, so before we jump in, I just want to show you the anatomy of a card. So what's on each card? So every card has a title, and then on the left of the picture are all the driver point symbols and rule symbols. And I'll talk about the symbols here in a second and what they mean. Then it also has a border color. Tan is your starter cards, so your good lap and your pit stop cards, because those are the only 2 cards you start with. And then if it's black, it's an event. If it's checkerboarded, it's a trophy card. If it's a green background, it means it's kind of a go card. It's a card that's going to help you buy more cards and get your deck going. Yellow is a caution card. It lets you mess with other players' cards. Um, so you can make them discard cards, things like that. Red is a penalty card, and that allows you to mess with other players' decks by adding negative points to their decks. So that's kind of a border color clue about what the card does. So when you go to buy a card, you know what it is. So this up here in the top right corner, that is the cost to buy a card from the track. Won't see any 14s out there. I mean, trophies can cost up to 15, but on the track you'll usually see up to about 8. Then there's the deck icon, which really doesn't matter at this point in the game. This is just for setup. It tells you which deck the card goes in. Then you'll have your regular text, which is your effect text, and it should be next to the little helmet effect icon, and that tells you what this card does special in addition to giving you driver points to buy other cards. Then you'll have italicized text, which is the flavor text. This has no effect on the game. It's just fun racing stuff um, to give flavor to the game and give flavor to each card. And then, as we discussed in the bottom right, is how many victory points that card is worth. All right, so a little bit about your play area here. This is our play area. You have 2 spaces to put pit cards. You've got a draw deck and a discard. Now these cards or these placemat things are not in the physical version of the game. They're just in the digital version to help us teach it. So here's your pit, where your pit cards go, your draw deck, and your discard. So now we're just going to go ahead and jump into turn 1. All right, so turn sequence. So the first thing that we do on the beginning of our turn is we choose any cards from our pit to bring into our hand. Of course, it's our first turn, so we don't have any cards in our pit. So we'll go ahead and go to step 2, which is play cards from your hand face up in front of you. So let's look at our hand here. We've got some good lap cards. So it's worth 1 driver point, which means every good lap in our hand gives us a driver point. We have 5 of them. So that means we could buy this blend line penalty, which is worth, cost 5 driver points. Good lap card also has an effect. You can spend 1 driver point to remove the card from the game. But basically, it's a way to get rid of these 1 point cards once you have a bunch of 2 driver point cards in your hand. And you can only do that 1 time per turn. So I couldn't spend all 5 of my driver points for my good lap cards and get rid of 5 good laps. So you can only get rid of 1 per turn. Okay, so let's go ahead and start playing your cards out here. So our first hand is a pretty lucky hand. We have 5 good laps. Now, as we said earlier, you could end up buying this blend line penalty. It costs 5. However, I don't think we want to use that yellow background card and start messing with people on our very first turn. What we're going to do instead is we're going to go ahead and get this drafting card. Costs 4, gives us the same 2 driver points that we would get from blend line penalty, but we get to take this good lap from our hand and put it into our pit so that we can use it on a later turn. All right, so when you buy a card like this drafting, a common mistake for people who have just um, started playing deck builders is that they think that they buy this card and it immediately happens. That's not how deck builders work. We actually buy a card and it goes straight to our discard, meaning that we have to go through our whole deck, shuffle that back in, and then draw it into our hand to be able to play it. So, so that goes into our discard. Then we will replace that card from track deck 1. And the way these track decks work is we start with track deck 1 and trophy stack 1. These trophies cost 11 points, and you don't know what you're getting because all of these trophies have been shuffled and just dealt out into these stacks. So when we have 11 driver points, we can buy a trophy. They're usually worth quite a bit more victory points than other cards in the track. Um, so we'll take this top card of the track deck and flip it over, and then we would take all of our cards that we played and drop them into our discard. And then the last thing we do for our turn is to draw 5 cards. And you'll notice that we have 3 good laps and 2 pit stops to start next turn. So it's good that you bank this good lap over here because then you'll have 4 buying power next turn. Okay, so instead of us going through every player's turn, I'm just going to make some assumptions here so we can get back to your turn, so you can get back to making some choices. So we're going to just say that this player up here, they only had 3 driver points, so they bought the buy card and put it into their deck. They didn't put anything into their pit, and then we replace that card. And then this player here decided they were going to mess with us, so they're going to buy this penalty card. The penalty card, when you buy this card, you place it on top of any player's deck. So that means that they don't actually take it into their discard. They'll just flip it over and it goes on top of our draw deck. So we don't have any cards. So it's actually just going to be the first card we draw at the end of our turn before we shuffle. It's back to our turn. Everybody's had theirs. We have a hand of 3 good laps and 2 pit stops. Okay, so we got 3, right? So the first thing you should do on your turn is pull any cards you want to use from your pit. We'll drop it here. So we have 4 good lap cards to buy hung out to dry. Let's talk about that for a second. So if you remember last turn, player 3 up there gave us a penalty card, and hung out to dry is going to help us out with that because it allows us to place a card from our hand or discard into any player's discard pile. So it's going to allow us to get rid of that if we have it in our hand at the same time or if it's in our discard pile. So it's going to allow us to get rid of that penalty card. This only has an effect. So this card doesn't actually give you any driver points, but it is kind of a defensive card so that you can use it to get rid of trash that people have put in your deck. So we'll take that and put it into our discard. And we got 2 cards left here. Both of them are pit stop cards. And I don't know if we want to use these just yet. You put this in your pit, and then at the beginning of your next turn, if this card is in your pit, you have a choice of 2 different things. Either you take all of the cards from the pit and just throw them out of the game, which could help you get rid of trash, or you can skip your turn and draw 2 cards, allowing you to maybe have more driver points next time around. And then on the next time around, you'll still have to make that decision again, whether you remove all of the things from the pit and take your turn, or skip your turn and draw 2 cards. And you could keep skipping your turn and drawing cards. However, you can only ever buy 1 card from the track. So even if you built up 25 driver points, the most you could spend is whatever 1 card cost. All right, so that's our pit stop card. We're actually not going to use these. So any unused cards that you don't drop in your pit, You don't hold on to them. You actually throw them into your discard pile. Okay, so the last thing we do on your turn is we draw 5. There's only one to draw, and it's that penalty card. So then what we'll do is we will flip our deck over, and we'll shuffle it, move it to our draw deck over here, and then we would draw 4 cards after we've shuffled it so that we get our cards. Oh, and look at what we get to do next turn. All right, so we'll replace the track here. We'll say that this player here takes a sandbag, and sandbag is worth 2 driver points. But see this broken trophy here? That means that this card is actually worth negative points at the end of the game. It's cheap to buy. It only costs 3. It gives you 2 driver points, but at the end of the game, it's worth -1. So you might want to get rid of that before the end of the game. So they'll buy this one. We'll replace the track here. And then we'll say that this player buys this one. Place the track. And now there are 2 events on the board. And it's our turn. So remember at the end of last turn, I said, look at what we get to do next. And we get to play this hung out to dry card. So it's going to allow us to place a card from our hand or discard into any other player's discard. We have this penalty here that another player gave us. We're going to give it right back to them. Now it's in their discard. They have negative points instead of us. Then we're going to spend a driver point here. And we are going to buy an event card. When you buy an event, you resolve the top card of the event deck, then you gain whatever driver points are on it for this turn, and you may purchase a second card during the turn, but you remove this event card from the game. So we remove this from the game. We take this first event card, flip it over and resolve it. This says starting lineup. So starting with the current player, all players take a card from the track and place it into their discard, then refill the track. So we're basically going to get a free card, but so is everybody else. So we'll put that over here for our 2 driver points, and then you get to select any card on the track because the card says the current player, you're the current player. So let's take this hammer down. It's worth 7, and it allows you to draw 2 cards on your turn. That's pretty powerful. This other guy will take the blend line penalty, and the other guy will take hung out to dry to try and get rid of that penalty that we gave them. You refill the track. So when resolving an event like this one, treat other events as if they are not in the track. So you'll notice that another event came up. So as players were choosing the card they wanted to take, they could not take an event card because it's not their turn, and you can only do 1 event per turn. Okay, so we resolved the event, and now we have to take the rest of our turn and still continue playing cards. So we've already used this good lap to buy that event. So we have 2 driver points that we have from the event. And we also have 2 driver points from our drafting card and 1 driver point from our good lap. So that gives us 5 driver points. We're going to go ahead and buy Closing the Door, which is just a go card that allows us to get 2 driver points. Take the last card, it looks like, from track deck 1 and put it out into the track. So whenever you uncover some of this text here, and I'll go ahead and pull this up so you can see the whole thing. So when the track deck is empty, move the remaining trophies, the 2 trophies that didn't get bought at this point, and put them into track deck 2. So now they'll actually cost 13. And then we'll start working on track deck 2 as we refill the track. Now, had we actually been able to buy some trophies, and I think that starting lineup helped us empty this deck quicker than it normally would have. But if the other had happened, if we had bought 2 trophies before those cards ran out, we would follow the rules on the bottom of this card. So when the trophy stack is empty, remove the track cards from track deck 1 from the game and fill the track from track deck 2. So that means you would take all of the track deck 1 cards that were left up here and all of the track deck 1 cards out on the track, remove them from the game, and then start going for track deck 2. And that changeover kind of just happens until we empty one or the other of these track deck 3 cards, and that signals the end of the game. So once one of these 2 decks is emptied, everybody gets an equal amount of turns, and then the game is over. This third player up here would be the last player to go after one of these decks is empty. So let's fast forward a bit. Now that we've kind of started track deck 2 to that last deck, I'm going to pause the video. We're going to fast forward a bit and then show kind of the end of the game. Okay, so we have fast forwarded till we're in track deck 3. There is 1 trophy left, and we are going to take our turns. So our hand looks like this. We've got this D and Q here, so we could spend 4 of our driver points to put this on top of somebody else's deck, because when they bought it, they put it on the top of our deck. It's worth -2 points at the end of the game, so that could be one of our options, is to get rid of this card, and then maybe somebody else will buy the trophy and end the game. But then we've got drifting, which is just 3 driver points. Closing the door for 2 driver points. I'll sort these out a little bit. And then 2 trophies. And I'll put the D and Q out there just in case we want to use it. Okay, let's see what we have for this turn. We have fastest lap for 4 driver points. We have photo finish for 2 more, making it 6. And we get to pick a player, and we could draw a card and they draw a card, so that could help. Then we have closing the door for 2 more, so that's 8. Then we have drifting for 3 more. That gives us 11 driver points. Oh, and we probably should have pulled in that drafting card from our pit. So let's pull that in. If you have stickler rule followers, they're not going to let you do that mid-turn. Okay, so we have 13, but we get to pick a player, and you and that other player draw a card. So with our 13 driver points, let's draw a card. And we have 3 more. So that actually gives us 16. We can go ahead and buy that last trophy, award-winning crew, which is worth 5 victory points here. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to use this card throughout the game, because if it's in your pit, you get to draw 6 at the end of your turn instead of 5. That could have been helpful throughout the game, but it's worth 5 points at the end. All right, so when this trophy stack is empty, the end of the game is triggered. Ensure each player gets the same number of turns. So we'll just say that the other 2 players, one bought this, one bought this, and then the game is over. So we have to take our cards and add up our points. We did not get rid of this D and Q here, so we have -2 points at the end of the game. So now that's the end of the game, we add up our deck. Normally you'll have more cards than what I have laid out here, but for the simplicity of just showing you final scoring, I have all of our cards laid out so we can add them up real quick. We've got 2 cards that have no victory points, so I just pulled them aside. And we've got 1 card that has -2 victory points on it. So basically you just add them up. What do we have here? 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 5 is 8, -2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, plus 5 is 12, another 2 is 14, and another 4 is 18, and then 3 more is 21. People didn't score as well because I didn't count their decks, because it's just a demo, so you win. Woo-hoo! All right. And that is a brief tutorial about how to play S.T.A.R.T. Feel free to email us or visit our website, chrysalisendeavors.com, if you have any specific questions, and we will get back to you on any of those questions about the game. All right, thank you.